Hey, what is up you guys? My name is Ivy. Welcome back to my channel, or to my channel if you are new here. This is going to be the first video that I have posted in like 2 weeks. I took a little bit of a break just out of respect for Black creators and people posting content about the Black Lives Matter movement. I posted a video like a couple days after everything started to kind of go down, and it didn't settle well with me. I felt like it was so irrelevant, so just out of tune with everything going on. So I have decided that for at least right now, until I feel comfortable, I'm going to be posting mainly true crime content on my channel, mainly cases about Black people who have not gotten their justice yet, or Black people in the LGBT community, people wrongfully imprisoned, things like that. I'm gonna be maybe throwing in a couple personal videos like vlogs or other things, but the majority of the content on this channel right now is going to be true crime. I also do want to say that I don't in any way want to come off as insensitive or like I'm speaking for the Black community. So if I say anything that comes off as racist or it's misinformation about the Black community or one of these cases, let me know in the comments. This is a time where I feel like everyone needs to be learning about what they can be doing better and what they've been doing wrong for a long time. So today we're going to be talking about the case of Tamir Rice. This was one of the names that I first saw being shot around a ton on social media, and realized that I had no idea who this kid was, never heard the story before, never heard of the case, and just thought that this would be a good one to start. It is a little bit more well known, but I personally had no idea of anything that happened in this case, and it was relatively recently. So Tamir Elijah Rice was born on June 15th of 2002 to Samaria Rice and Leonard Warner. Tamir was currently in 6th grade at an elementary school in Cleveland. He was described as a really pleasant boy. He loved art. He loved anything that had to do with sports. He played basketball at a youth center. He was really competitive in football. He was kind of described by a lot of his classmates as like the class clown. He would often get in trouble for little pranks or for disrupting class, stuff like that. Even though he was only 12, he was very, very big for his age. He weighed about 195 pounds and he was already 5'7". So on November 22nd of 2014, Tamir was walking along a park located in the city of Cleveland's Public Work Department. There was a 911 call reporting that there was a Black man walking around pulling a gun in and out of his pants. During this 911 call, the caller had stated twice that he thought the gun was fake, and then at the end of the call he said that the boy was probably juvenile, but the 911 caller failed to report this information back to the police who would be responding to this call.
The guy keeps pulling it in and out of his pants. It's probably fake, but you know what? He's scaring the
So the toy gun that Tamir was playing with was an airsoft pellet pistol. It was a replica of the M1911 semi-automatic, and it was just a toy gun bought from Walmart. It was a couple of years old, and if you're not familiar with toy guns, they usually have like a strip of orange along like the side of it, and that strip of orange had been removed, so it did look pretty similar to a real pistol. So the two officers who reported to this scene were 26-year-old Timothy Lohman and 46-year-old Frank Garman. Just a little bit of background on them. Lohman was still kind of a rookie. He had only been with that particular station for a couple of months, and Garman had worked there for over 10 years. He was pretty experienced. So they pulled up to the scene. They were about 10 feet away from Tamir, and allegedly, there's no evidence or proof to this because the security camera that did capture this does not have sound, but allegedly Momian said that he had told Tamir 3 times on their way driving up to where he was at to raise his hands, and he refused to do so. So they arrived on the scene. They pulled up about 10 feet away from him, and within 2 seconds Lohman had gotten out of the car and shot at Tamir at point blank range twice. One of those bullets hit his abdomen. He immediately fell to the ground. He was obviously bleeding out pretty quickly, and neither one of these officers did anything to perform first aid, any type of first aid, stopping the bleeding, mouth to mouth, anything. Garmin, however, did call 7 times for a EMS to come. Shortly after this happened, Tamir's 14-year-old sister ran up to the scene, and both of the police officers ran and tackled her. They put her in handcuffs. When Tamir's mother showed up on the scene, they threatened to arrest her if she would not calm down. So luckily there was an FBI agent close, and he arrived on the scene 4 minutes after it happened, and he attempted to perform CPR, mouth to mouth on Tamir, but at that point the bullet had traveled through his body. It had hit an artery, and he just was not going to make it, and he ended up passing away the next day in the hospital. This entire encounter was then released by the police department on November 26th, only a few days after it happened, and clearly there was a major outcry from the public after this had all went down. It was 2 police officers. They had shot this boy at point blank range. He was 12, and it happened only a couple months after the shooting of Michael Brown, who was also a young black man shot by white police officers. Or killed, I'm not quite sure if he was shot, killed by white police officers. And people had a lot of questions. They didn't understand how this happened, why the police officers didn't try to perform first aid on him, whether or not this was a hate crime, so obviously this case had to be evaluated and investigated by the police department. Now I kind of find this peculiar because a lot of the time they won't let you investigate people who you work with or who you're close to, and obviously this entire police department were working with these 2 cops, but it's interesting that they let people who had personal connections to them investigate this case. I understand it was in their jurisdiction. I just find it a little bit odd because they would have had personal connections to both of these police officers. So then on June 3rd of 2015, the Cuyahoga Sheriff's Office, I'm sorry if I'm totally butchering that name, said that they had gathered all of the evidence that they needed and that they were going to hand it over to the state prosecutor. And due to the public outcry of this case and the petition going around to send these guys to trial, it did go and get presented in front of a grand jury. They turned it over to prosecutor Tim McGinty, and Lohman was being charged with a series of crimes, the highest being involuntary manslaughter, reckless homicide, and neglected homicide. All of the evidence was presented to a grand jury, and neither of the officers were indicted for this crime. And I'm just going to read the statement that the jury released of why they came to this conclusion. Given this perfect storm of human error, mistakes, and communications by all involved that day, the evidence did not indicate criminal conduct by the police. So the only repercussions that they really had, Garmin was suspended for 5 days on paid leave. I'm not sure how much Lohman was. I couldn't find that anywhere. I'm gonna assume it was more than Garmin's. And then the 911 operator, Constance Hollinger, was also suspended for 8 days due to not reporting that the gun was probably fake and the boy was probably juvenile to the police who reported on the scene. A little bit of a background on both of these officers. Lohman had actually already resigned from a police department that he had worked for before. He had gotten very unstable during one of their shooting range practices, and they basically deemed him unfit to make decisions in high stress situations. And then Garmin actually also had a lawsuit against him for using too much force against this woman who he had arrested. They both already had things against them. Garman with abusing his power, and Bowman literally had been said by another police department that he was emotionally unstable to do this job. Now, I don't understand why there isn't just like a trust within the police departments throughout the United States. Like, you think if one police department says this guy should not be a police officer, that the next police department would be like, okay, good call. So obviously the police department got a lot of heat for this, and they basically completely wrote it off. They had had a budget cut a couple years before that, which led them to lay off 15% of their law enforcement, which after that was followed by an increase of high crime, which they then blamed on the decrease in law enforcement and the budget cuts. So around the time that Lohman had gotten hired, just a couple months before this had happened, they were, you know, just trying to get police officers, and that was kind of their excuse, that they were just trying to increase their manpower, and that's why they had hired him. So despite the fact that neither of these men were indicted for the crime, this particular police department did fire Lohman in 2017 because they had found out that he had lied on his application, which it was in the like personal part of the application, which is where the psych evaluation from the earlier police department would have been, which you're not even required to check to hire police officers. So then in December of 2014, jumping back a little bit, Rice's family did file a lawsuit against the city of Cleveland and the police department. This was then settled for $6 million, 5.5 of that going to the Tamir Rice estate, $250,000 going to his mother, and $250,000 going to his sister. So in October of 2018, the Bel Air Police Department hired Lohman and hired another police officer who was also under criminal investigation for misuse of the state criminals database. I don't know if he still works here. I believe that he resigned, but I'm not entirely sure, but I do not think that he works here anymore. I could not find any updated information on him other than this position that he was given. So other than that, that is all of the information that I could find on the particular day that Tamir died, and the police officers, the trial, everything like that. So that is the end of the information. I do want to let you guys know that any additional information, things that can help with Tamir's case, petitions, nonprofits, things that you can donate to, anything like that, I'm going to leave all in the comments. I'm also going to put them on my Instagram if you guys want to give me a follow there. I post a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I do just want to have a little chat like I have been doing at the end of these videos. The one particular reason that I really wanted to do this case, even though it is a little bit more popular and a lot more people know the information on it, I think this was one that could get reopened. I really do believe that, and I think they could have a retrial for this, because when you look at the evidence, it was decided completely on circumstance, which, I don't know, I'm not a law student, I'm not a lawyer, so let me know if that's even allowed. But circumstantial evidence shouldn't even hold up in court. There was a witness, it was caught on video, it was clear that it happened right away, and I don't think that it's a drastic or a crazy idea for at least this crime to be looked into. I definitely think that the officer who shot him should never be allowed to work in a police station ever again. He should not be given that power. I mean, that is like the littlest justice that I feel like this case deserves automatically. I mean, he shouldn't have been a police officer after he was deemed emotionally unstable to deal with stressful situations. I mean, that is what a police officer does. And obviously, I mean, I think it's clear. I don't want to come out and say that, like, oh yeah, he shot him because he was black, but like, let's be honest, this wouldn't have happened if Tamir was white. I mean, coming from a white girl who was raised in a pretty rural, mainly white town, it is engraved in your brain from a young age that black people are more intimidating, there are just like criminals, they're more dangerous. I mean, it's engraved into your brain So when he pulled up on the scene, like, I really think he was just freaked out because it was a black man, and obviously he wasn't even equipped to deal with these kinds of situations. So I think that there was no good reason for this little boy to die. I mean, he was 12. I feel like I'm younger than what I am, but the fact that he was born after I was born and he died in 2014 just blows my mind. And I'm sorry, but a settlement for $6 million doesn't do anything for that family. Like, it doesn't bring back their son. It doesn't give him the justice that he deserves. It doesn't help anything. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please, please, please sign the petition that is below. Do anything you can to help this case. Another thing I wanted to say is it's absolutely mind-boggling the little information that you can find on this case. I mean, there is barely anything, and maybe there just wasn't a lot of evidence, but most of the time, like, there's a lot more evidence than what regular people understand, and the little amount of information on this case blows my mind. And I genuinely do think it's just because it had to do with police officers and who investigated it, police officers who worked with them. But that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you are all in a good place right now, as well as you can be doing with everything going on in the world. If you need a place to vent, feel free to just leave a comment venting about whatever that may be. I will see you in my next video. Bye.